Those are the brightest in our society. That what else could they're paying it? They're paying that debt back in another way. They may not be paying it back, in terms of dollars right then and there, but many of them go and serve in different and underserved communities. Many of them teach in places where we can't hardly get teachers. And so they're getting that back. But what we need to do is we need to make sure that every student that comes out, that's taxable income, that's an incentive. Because if you're earning $30,000 a year, and let's just say you're in a 10% effective tax rate, okay, now your student loan amounts, the payments that you send back, they're barely gonna wipe out that tax. But now you've got a person who's a consumer and who's paying taxes a year, and the payroll taxes are totally different from your federal income taxes. So you've still got the payroll taxes being generated from these people. Right now, many of them aren't working. There's no incentive to work because the majority of their income is being taken towards student loan payments.
So you just keep deferring and
You
deferring.
keep deferring, it's just a never-ending cycle.
Yeah. Okay, so we have protecting the children, the mental health, amending student loans. What's our third thing that we were going to do as Stephanie goes to Washington?
I would put those two under the Children's Protective Act, and those would be one. The second thing I would definitely do is we need to start working on our borders. We need to secure our borders. We have so many things that are coming into our communities now because we won't secure our borders. We have the enterovirus that is affecting our children, and we knew 5 years ago that there was a high rate of this virus among Latin American children because we studied it. And so when we allow this to enter our borders, we understand where it's coming from. There's no question there. Ebola is another thing that could possibly be a big force for our country. But the bigger one is just terrorists coming across the border, just like other illegal immigrants are. And we've got to start rethinking how we secure our borders. I feel like we should have individuals who are returning home from active duty. Many of these men and women can't go right back into their homes and into their communities because of the effects of post-traumatic stress and other effects of being out into a combat environment. If we allow them to come and serve close to their home and securing our borders and a non-militarized action, and many of our borders are far enough away from our cities and towns that it doesn't feel like the military, but we have border control. So what is the difference between having a trained U.S. soldier who needs to assimilate back into his community, wants to do it in a way to where he's still contributing and is still able to be close to home and is trained to do it?
Okay. This is another controversial one because our country is made up of immigrants.
Mm-hmm.
No one, aside from Native Americans, are from here.
That's right.
So how are we to decide, well, we have enough, no more coming in? So when you say protect our borders, are we fencing? What are we doing, and why are we doing it?
Okay, when I say protect our borders, I mean stop the transfer of humans from one country into our country illegally. And
Okay,
so now
so you're not saying stop them should they go through the legal process?
Not at all, not at all. Now, I also want to point out that our legal immigration process is also a threat to national security, but nobody wants to talk about that. When you allow a foreigner who, let's go from the opposite end of the scale, not the person who's trying to get here because they have a family to feed. What about the person who's trying to get here, they have $15 million to put down on a property? Now we're allowing foreigners to come in and purchase legal immigration status. But what does that do when they're purchasing it by buying real property instead of buying property that reproduces or is a consumption-based product. If I come in and I buy the Waldorf Astoria, which was just purchased by a foreigner, if I come in and I purchase that, I've just bought real estate, real property in this nation, and my a right to vote and exercise whatever other influence that I want to have.
Mhm.
Now, if I have that kind of money to do that, then what are my other motives for that? Because it's happening at such a high rate now that we need to recognize, well, maybe we could be taken over from within with our own legal immigration policies.
So you're saying that the legal immigration policy needs to be relooked at
That's right.
because you're saying it is in some way being manipulated?
Exactly.
Okay.
We have Russian women in Miami. We've had a lot of coverage on this issue. Russian women who are coming here in their 8th month to give birth to babies so that they have American citizenship. This isn't by accident. It's not by accident that the majority of people who are buying our real property are Chinese and
Okay,
Russian.
but you, as the constitutionalist,
Mhm.
if you're born in this country,
That's right.
then you are a United States
That's right.
citizen.
That's right.
So, what's the problem with that?
They're not born in this country.
You
Except for the
said they
Russian
come in
baby,
their
that's
8th month?
different. That's different. That
Uh-huh.
baby one day will have all the rights of citizenship. The problem is this: when you start manipulating travel or whatever to create United States citizens, you know, it's sort of like if I come to your house, but I only show up at dinner time. You know why I'm there? Because I want to eat. I
Right.
want what you
You've
have.
been in my house because you know people.
Yes, I know they're gonna
Okay.
eat. I know they're gonna eat. But I want what you have, and if I'm so manipulative that I try to get it from the womb for the next generation of Russian citizens, then I have
I just don't know how you can manage that.
Well,
How
we
do you
manage that by
manage that?
taking out the loophole that if you buy U.S. property, you automatically get U.S. citizenship. That's how you manage it. Because right now we have real assets that are being sold, bought and sold, and that's the problem.
Okay, let's move on to some other issues that are facing Floridians. Florida continues to rank at near the bottom nationally in so many categories of economic well-being. Florida ranks the worst foreclosure rate in the USA and second worst poverty rate in America. What are you going to do to change that?
Well, we have economic policies that are creating this issue. First of all, we refuse to raise the federal minimum wage. We have to raise the federal minimum wage. People have the idea that the federal minimum wage was established so that teenagers would not be working for less than a fair wage. It was not established for teenagers. It was established so that working adults would have a living wage to live off of. And it hasn't been raised since 2009. It's gotten to the point now where China is outpacing us in growth because they've raised their wages, which is the true reason why American companies are coming back to the United States. It has nothing to do with this, oh, we're just so proud and we want to support America. It's
Now
because
it's no longer cheaper.
it's no longer cheaper. But because they've raised those wages, now their production has increased too. And that's what Americans need to understand. America is a consumption-based economy. So the more I have to consume with, the more that you have to produce to keep up with my consumption needs. And the people at the very bottom consume all of their income. There is no savings because there's no disposable income. So we are basically creating an economic system where 90% of our people can't participate.
Because
Because we
they're
won't
not
pay a
being
fair
paid.
wage. Yes.
Okay. So how is that unique to this state? Why is Florida ranked so low?
Because Florida has a very high population of service workers. So when the majority of your workers are in hotel and in retail and that kind of thing, those are the lowest rate, wages. And if we don't require, if I said, Shelley, I want you to come work for me, but I can't afford you, so I've had the federal government force you to work for less than I can pay you. That's what we're doing. That is what we're doing by saying we're not going to require companies to pay a fair wage. If you can't afford their labor, don't employ them. And for those people who say that we'll lose jobs, I've heard that we'll lose 500,000 jobs. That is a lie. That is a lie.
If the
federal minimum wage
wage
is raised. Because immediately, all of the money that these people are paid, it's going to be reinvested back into consuming goods in the economy. So demand will raise. So it's really a greed to me when you say, I'm going to eat off of you and you're not going to eat. That's not right. That's not American. When we talk about morality in America, my Bible says a man is worthy of his hire. He's worthy of his wage.
Good, very good. Okay. Out there, I hope you're typing in your questions in the Google Hangout. She is spitting fire, as they say. So it is definitely some good stuff here. We have so much more to cover, and we do have some constituents here who have questions. So let me get to the second part of my point about where Florida ranks, in comparison to the rest of this country. And Florida is known as ground zero for the foreclosure epidemic. What do you plan to do should you make it to Congress to fix this issue?
Well, we've said since this issue started that there needs to be a moratorium on foreclosures so that we can get our head around this thing. The problem is that we gave banks money and we said, we're going to bail you out because these homeowners couldn't pay their loans. But then we did double jeopardy because we told the homeowners, if you can't pay the bank, then you're still going to lose your home. But that was taxpayer money that we did that with. And then we set up a system with loan modifications that just simply doesn't work because banks have found a way to manipulate that system. So what we need to do is we actually need to go back and put a moratorium on foreclosures. And that goes back to 2008. There are some people that really, and we've got some legal recourse in place. The problem is that it's sort of like with the NFL concussion thing. They didn't admit that they knew what was going on until many years after the statute of limitations. Yeah. And so those are the homeowners that we really need to help.
So you would support a moratorium that, when you say to get a hold on or a handle on what's going on, we essentially already know what's going on.
Yeah, to give you an example, if I know that if this individual, what it would do is it would give this homeowner who's still in their home opportunity to go to, and there needs to be a government site for this, not the banks, but to give them an opportunity to go to that site and prove that their home or their mortgage was a subprime or a bad mortgage, that the lender should have known that.
So you think the homeowner should have to prove that?
No, I think that's easy for the homeowner to prove. You know what your credit score was at the time, and you know what interest rate they gave you. I have a homeowner who had a 650 credit score and had an 11.5% interest rate on a property that they told her that it would be 11.5 at closing. So those kind of things, the manipulation that a lot of the banks did at closing, those can be proven. But once that homeowner has made their case, then if that bank has received federal funds for that amount, then that debt needs to be wiped out. We start from that point forward, or we give them a buyout to where they can settle that thing and then move forward. But settling it only on the principal, not on the interest, because they've already been paid the interest by the federal government.
That is really a controversial, point of view that you just came up with there, because the banks have already been fined. Nationally, there was a settlement where homeowners who were in foreclosure throughout a particular period were sent a check to say, sorry,
Yeah.
yes, the paperwork
bad.
was flawed, right, my bad, here's $300. Even if you've lost your home, and we don't even know where you are because you're living with your parents in their basement, but here's $300. That's a slap in the face
It
to
is.
American homeowners.
It absolutely is. And that's why I say that if a homeowner is able to prove that they were in that position, regardless of the time, we already know, because the banks had to provide a list, just the same list that they're mailing those checks out from, or those notifications that they have been wrong. But by taking it away from the bank's hands, by taking it away from the individuals that they employ, and putting in a central processing unit through the federal government to where they can make their claims and get recourse, I just think that it takes some of the unfairness out of the process. There's more that we still need to do, but we need to start someplace.
That's a start. That is definitely a start. Okay. All right, let's get to the issue of, there was recently a study aptly called the Sunshine State Survey. And it was conducted by the University of South Florida School of Public Affairs and Nielsen. And it showed that Floridians on some issues were in agreement. There were a lot of issues that they were divided almost down the middle. I want to take each one of the issues and I want you to speak on them.
Okay.
But first, before that, the good news is that the survey showed that Floridians are feeling more optimistic.
Oh, well, that's
Optimistic
That's great.
about the direction the state is heading. So that's a good thing. However, there were some issues that they said not so much on the optimism. The rights to undocumented immigrants was a hot button for them. What do you have to say to that piece? Because does that also feed into your piece about protecting the borders?
Yes, it does. You mean by providing rights to undocumented citizens?
Providing rights.
Yes, that's a problem, because when you incentivize, you're incentivizing someone's behavior. I had a foreign sponsored child in Honduras, two of them as a matter of fact. One was 13 and one was 7. And I gave towards their support every month through an organization that was set up for that, Lifeline Christian Ministries. That was their heart. And so by providing funds in that way, those two kids stayed with their families. They went to the school that was provided by the ministry. They received clothing. I could go through a catalog and buy items for them that were sent, and they were able to purchase these beds and stuff like that at a reduced rate because they were a charity. We've done things backwards again in this country. When you provide care to people who are already working in those industries, working in those areas, then they can do what they do best. When the American government goes over and tries to do the same thing, we are a private company, so we get charged more. We get charged $10,000 for a screwdriver or a hammer or whatever they came out with. And so it's the exact opposite. We're not there for the right reasons. We're there for humanitarian reasons, but we're not there because that's what our heart is to do. So when you start providing benefits in the country that you're trying to keep people from entering into illegally, then you take away all incentive for them to stay in their countries and get assistance and help there. There's no way on earth that a child or an adult or anybody else should have the feeling that they have to flee their homeland. I completely 100% sympathize with that. But having grown up in Kansas City, Missouri, I can tell you that there's nothing that they have faced in Honduras, and I visited that country too, that is anything worse than growing up in the inner city of one of our inner cities in this country. So provide help through charities that are working in those countries for them to reach out to those individuals and prevent the need for them to come here illegally.
Okay. What about another issue that Floridians are not so optimistic about is repeal of the death penalty. What's your position on that?
The death penalty is one of the things that once you've enacted it, you can't take it back if you're wrong about. I'm torn on the death penalty, and I'm pretty sure that most Floridians aren't, so I just want to kill criminals. The problem with the death penalty is that it is disproportionately used against the poor and against minorities. And we have had many cases with the Innocence Project where we found that people were on death row were innocent, and thank God that, you know, they were found innocent before their loss of life. However, I think that in cases of some cases, it needs to be available. And so I'm not for getting rid of the death penalty, but I would like there to be some very specific instances in which it's used and be very, very clear on those. And the same thing with solitary confinement in our prisons. I think that, we have to understand some of the practices that we put into place don't lead to recidivism at all. They increase the chances of people coming out worse than when they went in.
Okay. What about allowing more casino gambling in the Sunshine State?
Well, Florida has a lot of casinos. I don't think I've ever lived in a place that had as many casinos. That, to me, is, again, a moral issue. If a person wants to set up a business and they want to take that risk and other people want to frequent that business, then, why are we interfering with that? Now, there are different things that come with.
So you're saying that you have no problem with?
I have no problem with more casinos. But the problem is this: if we look at Atlantic City, those casinos are closing up now. So Florida has to be careful and best be careful in deciding how to introduce that. But that's going to be a survival of the fittest in that particular market.
But that's their business.
And that's their business. That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about police use of drones.
Let's talk about police, period.
Well, let's talk about police, period.
Okay.
Let's talk about police, period.
We have to provide our police with resources. I think that a drone might be going a little bit too far in most instances. However, I think that police cars should be equipped with cameras for both the public safety and for their safety. I find it ironic that some of the police officers here in Florida are fighting that. I would think that
having the cameras
on their police cars or on their person. And
aren't there already the dashboard?
But they're not required to record every incident.
So the purpose of it is
this sort of, I think it's cute.
It's
just put them
fashion.
for fashion. But we want them to actually use the cameras. And I think that if we did that, it would eliminate a lot of the problems that we face. I grew up in Missouri, and the things that are going on in Ferguson, people are very confused by, because they think it's about Mike Brown or about the other young man. And it's really about the way that the poor and minorities have been treated by the police in communities all over this country. And I think that the people in Missouri have finally just gotten fed up and decided to take to the streets to voice that concern.
Okay. So then with that, what is your feeling about repealing Florida's Stand Your Ground law?
Okay. The problem with stand your ground is this. There is a specific part of the stand your ground law that says that even if you are the initial aggressor, if you begin to fear for your life, then you can use deadly force. That is the portion of the law that I would repeal.
That,
If you start something, you can't take out a weapon or use deadly force because now I finished it.
so you're saying don't start none,
No.
won't be none.
Exactly. It is in direct
That's the
violation
Stephanie
of the
Anderson
Castle
law.
Doctrine.
Don't start none, won't be none.
That's right.
Okay.
But that part of the law directly contradicts the purpose of the Stand Your Ground law in the first place. The Castle Doctrine was put into place so that if I came into your house and tried to harm you, you could use deadly force against me and not go to jail. And so we're actually now slapping that right in the face by saying, if I come in your house and you don't like it, but I get a gun and you decide that you're going to get a gun and I shoot you first, then I get off on Stand Your Ground. It's got to be fixed.
It's got to be fixed. The final issue, believe it or not, that the Sunshine State Survey showed that Floridians were iffy on was the issue of sales tax on internet purchases.
You know, I'm not iffy on that. I don't think that there should be sales tax on internet purchases unless the company is located in the state that you live in. So for instance, if I'm purchasing an item from a Florida-based company, then I should have to pay the sales taxes on those purchases. Now, I can see the argument for not having them, period. Because one of the problems that small businesses had 20, 30 years ago is that they started to not be able to compete with big box stores. And the people that are leading the charge against the charge for sales tax on these purchases are the people who own these big box stores. So if I'm a mom and pop, the only way that I can compete with you on a major level is if maybe I don't have to charge sales tax. So instead of doing things to limit the economic prosperity of individuals who are trying to compete, I think that we should allow that to be waived.
Okay. So I know that this is moving so quickly and we still have so much more to cover. So can you stay for some more? Okay. All right. These issues, Floridians are divided almost in half. First issue, allowing offshore oil and gas drilling.
We've got to have some kind of distance here. I'm born and raised in Louisiana, and the BP spill is still affecting us quite a bit. They have estimated that there's probably still 13% of that oil still in our streams.
Wow.
And so we need to have...
Is this becoming drinking water, or people actually...
I don't know that it's becoming drinking water, but it affects our ecosystem because we eat a lot of what comes out of the water.
Right.
A lot of fish, shrimp.
Right.
The majority of our diet is shrimp.
Right.
The majority of our diet is seafood.
Right.
And so it's, we don't know what the effects of that seafood is going to be, 10, 20 years from now in terms of birth defects and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So in terms of offshore drilling, I think that we do need it, but we need to do it responsibly, and we need to be very careful in the areas that we do it, especially down in the Everglades. We don't want to do anything that disrupts the Everglades natural ecosystem, because it controls the rest of our country's ecosystem. It directly influences that as well.
Okay. How about legalization of same-sex marriage?
Again, marriage is a religious concept. It cannot be defined by government. And so when we decided that we wanted our lawmakers to define marriage, that is what caused the controversy to go into the court system. Had we already had in place that under our First Amendment, that if you believe in something through your religion, then you follow that through your religion. But the religious community, and I'm a Christian, we decided we want this to be across the board, man and a woman. You can't legally define a religious term. You can't legally define that based on our Constitution. The word marriage predates the Bible. Predates the Constitution, because it's mentioned in the Bible, in the Christian Bible. And so that would be like us trying to define communion in our laws. We can't do that.
So you're suggesting that we cannot legislate something that is a right.
That's right. Because
okay. So you're saying it's a right that predates the Constitution,
mm-hmm.
and you as a constitutionalist, that was before your time,
That's
let's
right.
say.
That's right.
But you're suggesting that the concept of marriage, obviously then you're suggesting you support it, because you're saying it's something that our government should not be involved in.
It should not be involved in. Under the Equal Protection Clause, we have to give equal rights to citizens. So if there are two heterosexual individuals or two homosexual individuals of adult legal age, we cannot deny them benefits simply because of their sexual orientation. At the same time, we also can't tell a church, you have to perform a marriage ceremony for two homosexual or two heterosexual individuals, and we can't tell them that they can't do it. And by saying marriage is between a man and a woman, it takes away the religious freedom of individuals who might not believe that.
Interesting. Okay, interesting. So you are support the right for gays to marry.
I don't like the word married, though.
But you don't like the word. So you're really saying that it should be off the table for anyone, whether they're heterosexual or homosexual, that our government should not tell people you can marry or not marry, because you're saying that is outside of the Constitution.
I'm saying that in terms of the religious ceremony, the religious concept of marriage itself. There's a doctrine. Religious doctrine is different from
Okay,
law.
but the reality
And
is
so
that there are, in this country, we grant rights to people who are considered married,
mm-hmm.
and in terms of,
partnerships or civil unions.
but in terms of, even basic rights in a hospital, that, someone can
Yes.
make, do not resuscitate or different
That's
things,
right.
that they have a right as married people, that you don't have those rights to, if you're not considered married by the
state,
by the
church.
state,
And
by
that's
the state.
But that's the problem, because they're trying to say that needs to be by the church, by the
Who's
state,
saying that?
the religious community. Let me go back to what you just said. You said that if you the state grants certain rights, the state does not grant you a marriage. The state technically grants everybody a contractual right to enter into a contractual life agreement with another individual. That has absolutely nothing to do with marriage. If we use the word marriage the same way that we use the word chapstick. Chapstick is a brand, marriage is a concept, but lip balm is what we put on our mouth. The contract of civil unionship is what we actually enter to, every one of us. And then some of us take those to churches
Does everyone
to
have a right in this state of Florida to a civil union?
Absolutely, absolutely. And if your religious doctrine allows you to be married in their church, you have a right to that too. And if it does not, if their religious doctrine does not allow you to be married in their church, then they have a right to that as well. And the civil union is actually more recognized because that's all you have to have. You don't have to go to a church with that license to now become, to have the rights issued to a man and a woman by the state or by the federal government. You can take that license to a church and then have it blessed by God. That is a marriage. It's two different words. We have to start, this is a problem that we have, is that we use words like they don't mean anything. Like, for instance, the word African American, that's a dual citizenship. That's a concept. We can't just go around and say African American because you're not African American.
Correct.
So marriage is the same way. We use these words that have real meanings outside of the common meanings that we've given them. And then we expect our government to legislate based on the common meanings.
Okay, but these things are on our books by people who you will be working with. So are you looking to then take our laws and rework them so that those chapstick type words come out of there?
I don't necessarily think that that's necessary because there have been words that have just become indoctrinated into our society. But what we have to do is to take those chapstick type concepts out. We can't just say because we use this word that that's what it really means.
Interesting. That's interesting. We have to get back to that if we can. Let's talk about the Common Core standards in public schools.
Yes.
What's your feeling on that?
I think that we are missing the whole point in education altogether. Under the Children's Protection Act, I would actually have our kids start school at the age of 4, so that they're entering kindergarten at the age where they're actually doing active learning. If they needed to repeat it a second year, we still have the age of 5 for that. The other thing is that we're not necessarily teaching children how they're going to be measured as adults by doing the Common Core. So I would go to a performance-based evaluation that's based on a project or thesis type of compilation of their work at the end of the year. And that would involve them utilizing all the disciplines that they've learned to create an overall project that displays their knowledge, and you'd have a panel of teachers that would judge that, not a standardized test.
Okay, as a nation, our public schools, our students are just not able to compete internationally. I know someone who is the dean of admissions at a very prestigious college that says if they did not manipulate the numbers, they would all be Asian girls, the incoming freshmen, okay? What do we need to do as a country to be more competitive with our foreign friends?
We've got to start our educational system young in terms of giving our students hope. When you have children that grow up in the inner city or that grow up in poor families, rural communities, and they know that there's never going to be any hope, no matter how smart they are, that they're going to be able to afford to go to college or to go on and further their education or their technical vocational abilities in any way because of resources or because of whatever reasons, then you've already eliminated an entire segment of your community that's going to actively try to meet those goals and those challenges. And so we need to put into place a system where we guarantee that every child in this country is able to get an education. If we're able to cut entitlements, food stamps, nutritional benefits, and those kind of things for families, And those, let's say, what some of the reports that I heard from the other side, or both parties, I'm a nonpartisan independent, as you know, but what I heard from those sides is that, oh, we're saving $800 a month per family in benefit.
By doing what?
By reducing their food benefits. Okay, well, 800 times 12, okay, why don't we make sure that that child now has those resources available? We can't increase their student aid by $5,000 a year after 4 years, after we've not fed them, taken the money away from benefits that we were giving in other areas. Not everybody that receives entitlements in this country has paid into them, but everybody that as a United States citizen should be allowed the same type of safety nets that we have put into place for previous generations. And so we've got to do a better job of just making sure that not only do these children have the hope and the access to higher education, but they have the resources to pay for it and to dream towards going there.
Okay. One last question from me before I open it up to some constituents who here that have some questions. And this kind of goes to what you just said, that you're nonpartisan. But the fact is, we all know that the citizens' trust in the government and business leaders is low. In an unusually diverse state like the state of Florida, while most people would think that the issues are around race, religion, gender, and age, really Floridians said in this survey that their concerns were more of the societal problems regarding partisanship and the gulf between elected officials and ordinary citizens. So how do you address that issue?
I think that makes perfect sense, and I wish that lawmakers would pay more attention to that. I'm a public servant. I'm not a politician. This was not my life dream or my job or anything like this. But when you see that no matter who you are, what you look like, where you grew up, when you come to Florida, everybody has the same problem with the partisanship that's going on in our government. That's because across the board, that we're feeling it. We're seeing the results of it. And when you've got two gubernatorial candidates that you can't tell the difference between, period, at all.
Richer.
Yes, yes. Or corrupt or corrupted. You have individuals who are fed up with it. And so what I would challenge the American people to do and Floridians to do is to look at alternatives in your districts, in your communities to vote for. Because when you have individuals who are ideologically bound to a party, that's who they're bound to. I'm bound to the American people. I've decided that, someone told me on Twitter, they said, you have to pick. I said, I did pick. I picked the American people. Mm-hmm. The problem is that we have politicians that have picked the people that they're lobbying for. And they're going to D.C. and they're continuing those interests, and they have nothing to do with 98% of this country.
Well, I think that's a perfect segue to then go to the American public. And we're still taking your questions at Google Hangouts, so be sure to type that up on the chat and we'll certainly try and get those covered. But I think we do have some people with questions. Your question.
Ladies, you are awesome.
Thank you.
My question is for Stephanie. Can you tell us a little bit more about who your competition or who you're running against right now, and whoever that person is or people, how your policies differ from that person's policies?
I am running against Joe Kaufman, who's a Republican, and Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who is a Democrat. She's actually the party chairperson for the DNC. And Mrs. Wasserman Schultz has been in office for several years now. I would say that the biggest difference between she and I is that I am nonpartisan. I am not going to sign off on anybody's ideas across the board. I don't even trust anybody who agrees with me 100% of the time. You got to worry about that. And so with both of these parties, that's the issue to me. I'm sure that both individuals are, wonderful, people, wonderful family individuals. But in terms of just being there to serve the people of this community, I feel that I would do a better job of actually listening and also communicating those ideas to Washington.
Have you had the opportunity to debate with them?
No, I have not had the opportunity to debate with either candidate. The way that our two-party system works is that it's easier to ignore the other candidates so that you don't draw attention to the fact that they're vastly different from you. And so I think Adrian Wiley has also experienced a little bit of that in his candidacy towards the governor's position. He's been shut out of every debate. But I welcome the opportunity to discuss any issue with them face to face.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? Okay. Stephanie, I just want to cover this because I think this is important for people to know about you, is that you have been very, very powerful advocate for the small business. We haven't really touched on that. Tell me why your passion for the small business owner and what you plan to do when you take their issues to Washington.
I'm passionate for small businesses because they make up the majority of businesses in our country. 98% of our businesses are small businesses. And within those small businesses, there's a segment that have not had access to education, to resources, financial resources to make their businesses grow. Some of this is just because of the resources that are limited to a particular community. So one of the things that I've set out to do is to make sure that I educated small business owners on all of the rules of their businesses and how it would relate to their overall bottom line. We have many people that have great ideas and they know how to produce, but they don't know how to retain their wealth that they're producing. And so that's one of the things that is very a big passion of mine, because by building generational wealth or something to leave to your children, even if you've got a business where maybe you're clearing $250,000 or $50,000 or whatever the case may be after taxes, you're doing something that's contributing towards the next generation of your family being able to make it ahead. And the perfect example of that is my own family. My mom grew up barely, able to get a college education. If it weren't for historically black colleges, she wouldn't have even gotten as much education as she did back in the 50s and 60s, 70s by the time she got to college. And so the fact that we are able to, just one generation after my mom finished school and had me, that my daughter's able to go to school in an entirely different manner. She doesn't have to go to school to struggle the way that I did, because my mom made those sacrifices so that I could get a better education and stay in school and actually finish my education and be able to put a little bit away towards making sure that my daughter was able to get hers as well. Not so much even the financial part of that, but just being able to instruct a child. This is how you do it. We didn't have those instructions coming out. Many of us went to school. Our parents didn't even drop us off. We had to figure out how to get there. We had to figure out how to enroll. And our kids nowadays are going in a different way, but it's because of the generations that our mothers and their mothers made.
So what's the responsibility for our generation to the next?
Our generation has a responsibility of modeling the behavior that we want them to create.
Excellent.
We cannot continue to say we want lawmakers to legislate morality. We want you to say it's illegal for our kids to have sex with this person. We want you to say that it's illegal for our kids to do this. We want you to say that it's illegal for our kids to do that. If you said it's illegal and then you didn't do those things in your home, most of it wouldn't, that's where it would stop. And so that's where we've got to start modeling what we want to recreate.
Sounds good to us, huh? Okay, well, do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up this forum?
I just want to say thank you, first of all, to you and your great questions. Incredible. You can tell that you put a lot of time into finding out what was important to Floridians and bringing those questions to us here today. I appreciate that. And then I just want to say to voters that you have a clear choice in 12 days. We have candidates on the side that are the left and of the right. And I'm not saying that I'm a middle of the road on anything. I have very clear opinions and ideas and solutions on the issues. And some of them may not appeal to both sides. But I will promise you this, I will not make a decision, I will not legislate from a point of view that does not take your views, our views as Americans into consideration. We have got to do a better job of leading our country because it's the right thing to do and not because someone is writing us a check to do it.
Well, that certainly is a perfect place to end this forum. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
You've been awesome.
Thank you.
Everybody out there, remember November 4th, get out and vote. This young lady really could use your vote.
Absentee ballots, send them in.
And remember, the best is yet to come. Have a great night.